Ever pinch pennies all year for that one family vacation only to feel the budget blues afterwards? If so, I was just like you. After 3 vacationless years, I stumbled on credit card rewards travel and cracked the code to amazing vacations that I could actually afford.
Welcome to Wonderland on Points. In this podcast, you will discover how opening credit cards strategically can save you thousands on travel. We're not just dreamers anymore. We're two adventurous moms turning dreams into reality. Join us as we spill all the points and miles secrets.
And contrary to popular belief, you don't have to spend $1 million to earn 1,000,000 points. Traveling on credit card points isn't reserved for those with overflowing bank accounts. It's for everyday people like you and me, learning to turn routine expenses into free travel.
Consider us your points travel guides. This is Wonderland on Points. Let the adventure begin. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Wonderland on Points podcast. My name is Mary Ellen.
And I am Jo. Thank you guys so much for being here today because we have a treat, which is when we get to interview another podcaster. And we have Devon from Point Me to First Class on. And Devon is incredible. She is so smart and her explanations for things just make sense to my brain. Like she does such a good job taking very complicated information and putting it in a way that I understand, which is why I love listening to her podcast so much. And she kind of has a different angle than we do. You know, we talk a lot to the families and the budget travels, and she works specifically with business owners and people who have large business expenses. So if that is you, this is the episode for you. But even if you don't have a large earning, large spending business, this episode is still fantastic. I feel like there was never a dull moment. I felt like I was kind of on the edge of my seat listening to her talk the whole time.
Yeah, she's a teacher by nature. She's a physician. She's not a practicing physician at the moment, a former physician. And I can tell that she was just probably great with anybody that she worked with, patients, because she has that wonderful way of explaining things. So if you have a business, if you know a business owner, send this episode to them because we want to make sure that nobody is missing out on the massive points earning potential and opportunity that business owners specifically have just due to such high business expenses. You can be earning so many points and going on so many fabulous trips. And we don't want any of that left on the table and not taken advantage of. So this is going to be a cool episode, not just even for the business earning. We also get into a little bit of favorite flight routes from Chicago, paying taxes. Everybody, business or not, we all have to pay taxes. So paying taxes is coming up. That is very much on our radar right now. So we dig into how you can really maximize paying your taxes to earn points as well. So we're thrilled for you to be here and to hear this episode. Don't forget, leave us a rating and review if you like the episode. Share it with a friend. That's how we grow. And find us on Facebook, okay? We have the group Traveling on Points, Wonderland on Points podcast. You can find us there and join in on the conversation and learn a bit more.
Absolutely. Our Facebook group is one of our favorite places in the world because it's so fun relating with everybody where you can type things up in long form. It's not just a quick comment on Instagram. It's really a great place to dig into questions and share your trip itineraries. It's just a really nice community over there. So we'd love to have you guys there. And I do want to remind everybody before we dig into this that if you are new in this space, you might be hearing about business cards and you might think, wow, I wish I could take advantage of these amazing business cards, but I don't have a business. I am here to tell you that that is not necessarily true. And you may have heard this before, but if you do anything that generates money outside of your regular 9-to-5 job, you actually do have a business. There are people that have reselling jobs where they buy things at thrift stores and resell on Facebook Marketplace, or they're selling things that they have in their house. I personally do a lot of pet sitting on the side, and that is the job that I used to apply for my business cards. There are many, many things that qualify you as a business. You do not have to have an EIN or an LLC. You can do it as a sole proprietor. So if you have questions about that, reach out to us. We would love to help you. We would love to talk through what business cards would be the right fit for you. And we now have referral links, you guys. This is new. This is new since our last episode, and we're really excited about it. We have chosen not to affiliate with Chase because we want to keep the integrity of our podcast alive. We want to be able to be as transparent as possible and teach you guys everything without having to censor our language, make you jump through hoops to get the information. We will be using our personal referral links. If you ever need any Chase cards from us, we will be sending those. But for all of the other cards, all of the other brands, with a few minor exceptions, we have links for all of them now. And that's really exciting to us because that allows us to explore really what is the best card for you, for your goals, for your family, and offer that to you. And it's a great way that you can support the podcast that comes at absolutely zero cost to you. You have to use a link, no matter if you're getting it from Google or getting it from a person. So if you love the podcast, in addition to rating and reviewing, if you don't have a family member or friend to get that link from, reach out to us. It goes such a long way in supporting us and helps us so much and allows us to keep putting a bunch of our time into this.
And the last thing that we really want to say before we dive into this episode where we talk about business expenses is if you are not okay with business cards and you are not comfortable applying for business cards because you don't feel like you truly have a business, that is okay. It is okay to only use personal cards. Don't feel like you have to. That's always been a big thing for me. I did not feel comfortable using business cards before I truly had business expenses, and that is okay too. We don't want you to feel left out. But we also don't want to ignore the side of this. This is very powerful for business owners. So if you are a business owner, hang on to your seat because this is about to get exciting. Let's roll our interview with Devon from Point Me to First Class.
Here we go.
Today we have a real treat, guys. We have a fellow Points and Miles enthusiast podcaster on the show. We are welcoming Devon from Point Me to First Class. Devon is a former physician who really got into this as someone who was passionate about helping other physicians harness their businesses for travel and using points to kind of decompress probably from the world of medicine and travel the world with their friends and family. So, Devon, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It's such a treat to be here with you and your audience. So, a little bit about myself and cut me off whenever you want. I've been told I can turn any short story into a long story. So, you just tell me when to stop talking and I will.
And you both.
Yes. So, like you mentioned, my name is Devon. My background, sort of educationally and professionally, was in medicine. I was like one of those kids who grew up only ever wanting to be a doctor. And so, from that sense, my background is very traditional. Went to a bunch of school, went through a bunch of training, became a doctor. But through that whole period, travel was something that I always wanted to do, but never had access to. So I was raised by a single mother. We were not very financially resourced. I was born and raised in Southern California. And so for us growing up, travel was like road trips, like let's road trip to,
Right.
A national park, or let's go camping. Like that's kind of what travel looked like. And that's lovely. But I always wanted to see the whole world. We used to get these National Geographic magazines in the mail. And I remember just sitting in my closet, as a kid late at night. And I'd be like flipping through this magazine and looking at pictures of like the pyramids in Egypt, and just being like, I want to see that, and we just didn't have access to that like so many other folks, And so fast forward, 100 years through all of the school and education and stuff, I came out of all of my training around 2012 and I joined a small private practice. I'm now in the Chicago area. And it was kind of like, great, like now I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to be a doctor, practice medicine full time until I'm 65, retire. And I realized coming out of all of my training, which I always knew, but I knew nothing about money. We'd never had money. No one ever taught me about money. The only thing my mom ever taught me about money growing up, literally, she had a conversation with me one day in the car driving me to school about how credit cards are terrible.
Yeah.
They're really bad. She had gotten into credit card debt, when my sister and I were very young because she was trying to provide for us, and took her many, many years to get out of debt. And basically what she said was never have a credit card. If you have one, never ever use it. It's for emergencies only. They're very dangerous. And I was terrified of credit
Yeah.
cards. And then, all through undergrad and medical school and my medical training, again, I had no money. So it's like, what would I do with a credit card? I can't pay it off, so and I'm scared of them. So I never had credit cards. And then when I finally came out of training, it was the first time in my life where I was actually making money, where I had something left over after paying bills. And I also had, tons of student loans. And it was just very clear to me, I'm in my early 30s. I have an opportunity to learn about money and maybe do a little bit better, than I had experienced growing up. But I don't know at all what to do with money, how to make decisions, how to be responsible. And for me, it started out just trying to educate myself about personal finance. And in reading a lot of stuff online, reading blogs, one thing turns to another, started finding travel blogs, started finding people writing about using credit cards to travel. And there was the piece of me that was like, wait a minute, I love to travel, especially these people who are claiming you can travel in business class for less than the price of economy. Like that sounds great to me. And the side of me that was, had been taught credit cards are terrible. They're bad. Don't ever get them. And it was really kind of challenging for me to try to reconcile those two things. Like, do I try this out? Is it worth it? Is this all a scam? And so I actually started very, very slow in this hobby. I'm not the person who dove in and applied for 5 credit cards right away. Like I took it very, very slow because I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to mess up. I wasn't going to make some really terrible decision. And, as I was reading online, like, no, this isn't too good to be true. There's a way to do this very responsibly, very deliberately, and you can have amazing experiences. And kind of tandem, the thing that was happening at the same time is that, I was in this medical practice. It was a small physician-owned practice, meaning that there were 4 doctors that owned and ran this practice, and they made all the decisions about it. And once a month, we would have meetings around kind of what's going on in the practice, like, what are we spending money on? What does the laboratory need? And they would talk about, needing a piece of medical equipment and it would cost $400,000 for a single machine, right? Or needing to replace some supplies in our laboratory. And, medical supplies can be expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm
Crazy
reading
expensive.
online in all my spare time about, earning credit card points and using them for travel. And then I'm attending these meetings where, the partners in the practice are talking about, this is what we're spending on shipping costs. And this is what we need to invest in, lab equipment this year. And it was just this light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, here I am with my grocery bill thinking, how can I maximize, the points I'm earning on my groceries? And I'm looking at this business like, this is a gold mine, like being able to use your business expenses to earn points. And they had, of course, no clue, like the practice had a credit card that was from, like a local bank, a local credit union. There, no reward structure whatsoever, no cash back, no transferable points.
The missed opportunity is painful.
Yes, and I remember sitting in those meetings thinking like, oh my gosh, you are just missing this amazing opportunity. And then kind of like a year later, my husband, who's also a physician, he had finished his training a little bit after me. He had worked in the Chicago area for a larger practice. Then he decided he wanted to go out and he wanted to be self-employed. And after sitting in my own medical practice where I had no decision-making capability, like I was not a partner, I didn't have any say in anything we did, and watching all of these points, like just fall, through the cracks in this practice, I remember thinking, okay, if you're going to start your own medical practice, we're taking advantage of this for every single expense we can.
Yes.
Right. And that for me really was kind of the beginning of everything. And it made me realize too, especially for, my community, for folks who have spent basically their whole life in education, they haven't had time to kind of pursue hobbies, haven't had time to learn about things, outside of medicine. And also people who tend to have, higher than average expenses, whether that's personal expenses, certainly business owners. It to me was this like, oh my gosh, here's a community that has so much opportunity to earn tons and tons and tons of points and do amazing things with them. And they have no clue this even exists, right? And so this started for me very much as a personal hobby and ultimately later became a business. But in the beginning, it was very selfish. It was, I want to learn how to travel and I don't want to spend money. What is that going to look like? And then seeing all these opportunities, especially around, business expenses and learning how to really take advantage of those opportunities.
Oh my goodness. What a story.
I always say, like Most people don't go through medical education, medical training. I actually did a residency, a fellowship. I'm double board certified. Like most people don't do that to then decide, I'm going to go and teach about points and miles.
Right. So you actually retired from medicine, right? How many years ago was that?
Yeah. So this is the interesting part of it. Like I mentioned, when I came out of my training, I thought I'm going to have a very kind of traditional, boring in a good way professional life. Like I did all this training. I love the practice of medicine. This is what I'm going to do full time until I'm 65 and retire. And as sometimes happens in life, plans don't always go the way you think they're going to go. So I was in this medical practice for about 7 years outside of training. And a lot of things were just changing. Things change in medicine all the time. A lot of things in medicine are state specific. So the way they work in one state may not be the way they work in another state. A lot of things inside the practice I was in were changing a lot. And it just became not a good fit for me personally. And I kept trying to make it work and it just wasn't. And so for me, I decided very kind of coincidentally around August of 2019, this is not a good fit for me anymore. And so I decided to leave my position in that practice. And at that time, it wasn't because I was like, oh, I'm going to build this business around doing points. All I knew was the only thing, I've ever trained to do is be a physician. This has not been a good fit for me and I need to step away from it for now and we'll see kind of what happens. And obviously, 2020 was a very interesting year for the vast majority of us. It again, very coincidentally ended up giving me a year to be home with my kids who were really young at the time, who otherwise, all of our childcare fell through, like it did for a lot of people. And so, I stepped away from medicine just because it was not a good fit for me at that point, not knowing, am I going to find just a different, position in medicine later on? Maybe are we going to pick up and move somewhere? I don't really know. And basically once, the pandemic kind of started calming down, my kids went back into school on a more regular schedule. There were still no jobs for me locally that felt like they would be a good fit. And my partner, my husband and I, we had a lot of conversations about what's best for our family, what's best for us, as two individual adults. What do we kind of want to do? And we both wanted to stay where we are geographically. And so I was like, well, if there's no good position for me medically, I want to do something else. I love learning. I love being intellectually stimulated. And I wasn't at that point. Not having something to do was very, very challenging for me. And, at that point in my life, I was like, well, I know two things and that's it. Like I know how to practice my field of medicine, which I've chosen not to do right now. And I know how to earn and use points and miles to travel. And if I'm not going to practice medicine, maybe I should kind of talk about this more. And again, this for my own personal experience, I had seen how well positioned the physician community is, the small business owning community is to just take this hobby and run with it. Yes. And I felt like there was this huge gap where just so many of my colleagues didn't know about this because why would you? It's kind of like a random thing. Like, why would you just know about earning points?
And then once you know. You
can't unsee it. Once you start looking around and seeing all of the people with expenses that are not putting them on credit cards, it is excruciating. And I would imagine the high spend that's coming from the business owners that you work with, they probably have a lot of regret about all of the years. I would imagine you have to do some mindset coaching, like it's okay
there's a lot.
on all of the things you've missed out.
Yes, absolutely.
Start fresh.
And so I was thinking, again, there's only a few things I'm really good at. So why don't I just try to educate, my community, my friends about how to do this? Because I think one of the other things that I saw really quickly, again, was the impact. I think one of the misconceptions around points and miles for people who don't know that much about it yet, or maybe have not done a lot of research, is this idea that, well, that sounds okay, but I'm going to have to, earn points or put all my expenses on credit card for 10 years. And then all I'm going to get out of it is maybe one domestic flight. I'm going to finally have enough points to do one domestic flight. It just doesn't seem worth it. Right. Yeah. And for me, from my own personal experience of saying, oh, well, that could be your experience, but also, your experience could be very, very different when you know just a few, of these approaches and a few of these tricks. And I think that is the thing that for my community is really, really compelling. Understanding that, once you learn a few kind of basic approaches, the payoff of this hobby can be tremendous, right? And
Yes.
again, like who doesn't love a deal? I think there's just something about the human brain where when you can get something for nothing, you can get something for much less than it would otherwise cost, especially when it's something you want, a flight somewhere, a trip somewhere, an experience you get to share with your partner or your family. I think there's something very, very addicting about it in a
Yes.
healthy way.
Absolutely. So let's get into today. We really want to dig in for business owners because that's really your area of expertise and your passion. We want to get into some tips, some advice, maybe some of your experiences for how they can really harness their business and get the most out of their expenses. So the first question I have, and this is pretty specific, but we have heard one of our good friends is a lawyer out in California, Travelers in Law on Instagram. And she was talking about her family's law practice. And she was saying that with Capital One, it really makes it easy to share points for employers to share points with their employees. So at the end of the year, there's ways that they can maybe gift points to employees for, whatever reasons. So are there any banks like Capital One that you've maybe found to be better than others for business owners?
Yeah. And I think this really comes down to, as a business owner, kind of what is the structure of your business? And also, what do you want to do with those points? So I think the answer will be different for different people, but just as sort of, generalizations, I completely agree with what your friend said. I think that Capital One of all of the points earning credit card issuers makes it the easiest to combine points, to gift points, to share points. And so I think if that is a big priority for people, some of the times I work with businesses that have just one single owner. That's a very, very different scenario than maybe, a multi-specialty medical practice that has 20 owners, right? So you're thinking about what does this business need in terms of credit cards that are going to make it easy for them to earn points? And then also, what are the priorities in terms of earning the points, and what credit card issuers make that easy too? And so I think if one of the priorities is that you have multiple business owners who all have shared expenses or who all want to use points, Capital One, I would say absolutely, is probably the best issuer to get your rewards credit cards from. In a couple of different scenarios, Chase can also be really, really powerful. American Express can be powerful. I think one of the things that I love about American Express is that their business credit cards are charge cards. And that's kind of a distinction that I think it's true on their personal cards as well. But I think for personal spend, people may not know the difference between a charge card or a traditional credit card, or it may not have that big an impact on them in general. But for business owners, this can be a very big deal because charge cards do not have a preset credit limit the same way that traditional credit cards do. And so for a business owner who may have individual very large expenses, like I mentioned, if you're purchasing a piece of equipment that could be 5 figures or 6 figures in cost, most of the time a traditional business credit card is not going to have a credit limit that's going to be big enough to hold, that type of charge. A lot of us
Right.
are not walking around in our personal lives thinking, where am I going to put this $100,000 individual expense? But
Yes.
for a business owner, again, depending on what the nature of your business is and the expenses are, that can be a very, very real scenario. And so I think for business owners, one of the best things to do in the beginning is to get an overall kind of idea about how much does my business tend to spend, over an annual basis, and what does that spend look like? Is it a lot of smaller spends, like a lot of monthly subscriptions or a lot of small monthly charges? Or is my business the type of one that is also going to have individual, very, very large expenses? Because if that's the case, I'm going to need to find a rewards card that allows me, to work with my expenses in a way that's easy, right? Most business owners are not looking for how can I make my business life more complicated?
Yeah.
How can I choose to
100%.
do something that's going to give me more
Yeah.
work, or it's just going to be really challenging for my staff to manage? And so, I think just having an understanding of who are the nature of my expenses and what are the cards that are going to fit that best. And then also, like we talked about on the flip side, what do I want to do with these points? Because if you're a solo business owner, that's a very different picture than if you have multiple partners, or like you said, you really want to have the opportunity to share or move points earned from the business to multiple different employees.
Do Amex and Chase and other ones outside of Capital One have any way that you've found to share points? Because it's
There
not really something that we ever get into. We talk to a lot of moms and a lot of families here. So
Yeah,
it's
kind of
outside
yes
our realm.
and no. So there are similarities on the business side to the way that a lot of these credit card issuers function on the personal side. So, for American Express, we know for folks who have personal Amex membership rewards points earning cards, Amex doesn't give us an option to say, I want to share my points like with my partner or with my spouse, right? Or I want to share my points with an adult child who also has Amex points earning cards. Amex will allow you to take your own Amex points and move them,
Mhm.
into a transfer partner account of someone who's an authorized user on your card. And it kind of works the same way on the business side as well. And Chase has their rules around who can you actually combine points with. And on the business side for Chase cards, it's similar. So if you share a business with multiple business owners, you can transfer or combine your Chase Ultimate Rewards points amongst those people. But Chase and Amex tend to be a little bit more challenging in terms of just outright combining and sharing points again than Capital One. And that's one of the reasons I think Capital One really shines as a transferable points currency. And again, that's not limited to the business credit cards. We see that on the personal side as well, where Capital One says, you want to share points with just a human being? Great, go ahead. There aren't all of these rules and limitations and constraints like we see with the other credit card issuers.
That's awesome. If you were to pick some specific cards, like 2 or 3 of your favorite business cards for business owners, we're always talking about, make sure you can handle the minimum spend for a card that you get. Because for families, traditionally, $8,000 for minimum spend might be very challenging for a
Of
family,
course.
middle
Yeah.
class family to hit. But you guys working with these business expenses are able to hit some of those cards probably that have the $30,000 minimum
Yes.
spend. So talk to us a little bit about your favorite cards for businesses when it comes to the perks and the points earning potential and everything.
Yes, I have so many favorites. So we will not cover all of them because that could probably be like 6 episodes in and of themselves. But I'm going to kind of group it into 2 categories. So I think there are some really, really incredible no fee business cards. I think it's a misconception from some people that all business credit cards have very high annual fees or require, like you said, very high spend initially to get the welcome bonus. There are also some really great no annual fee business cards. And I love these for smaller businesses. Businesses come in all shapes and sizes. There could be
Yes.
someone who's self-employed and their business brings in, $20,000 of revenue a year. There's also businesses, again, that are spending multiple millions of dollars a year to run their businesses. So, for a lot of especially small businesses in the beginning, I think having options of no annual fee points earning cards is really powerful. And 2 of my favorite ones are the Amex Blue Business Plus card. So, this is issued by Amex. And then one of the Chase business cards, the Chase Inc. Business Unlimited card. The reason I love these cards, again, they're no annual fee, so that's not going to put a really high burden, on you as a business owner to pay out even more just for the benefit of holding one of these cards. The Amex Blue Business Plus card, it's so simple. It earns 2 times points on all of your spend up to $50,000 spent annually, which again, based on the size of your business, that may cover all of your spend, or it can at least cover a good chunk of spend to earn 2 Amex points for every dollar. You don't have to track categories. There's kind of no hoops to jump through. It's so simple. I love that card. And the
Yes.
Chasing Business Unlimited card is great because that earns 1.5 times Chase points, again, on any spend. So for people who don't want to hold multiple cards, who don't want to track which card do I use for this expense or, how do I use this card? They want simple and not expensive. I love those cards. I mean, I do want to say for folks who are getting into the Chase ecosystem, the Chasing Business Unlimited card, it is marketed as a cash back card. But
Yes.
as long as you hold a Chase Sapphire Preferred or a Chase Sapphire Reserve, or for your business, if you also already hold a Chasing Business Preferred card, then the Chasing Business Unlimited card becomes a points earning card. So I think those 2 are great for, I consider these to be more like entry level, again, very kind of low risk, easy to
Yes.
use cards. But for those business owners, again, who do have higher expenses, who want to have a card that's going to offer you a really, really powerful, welcome bonus and gives you some perks and benefits. My 2 favorites right now are the Capital One Business Venture X card. And
Mm.
I love the Amex Business Platinum card. This is a card that I have held. Well, I have multiple of them, but I got my first Amex Business Platinum card, years and years and years ago. And it has been a keeper for me every single year. And so both of those cards, again, they can offer enormous welcome bonuses, which is great if you have enough business spend where it's easy for you to meet that spend requirement. But the Amex Business Platinum Card, one of the reasons I love it is that for individual expenses that are $5,000 or higher, which again, based on your business, you may have a lot of those, it earns 1.5 times Amex points. And I think this is really, really powerful. Again, especially for those individual business expenses that you may not be able to put on a traditional credit card if that expense is high enough. So I
Yeah.
have a lot of business owners who love the Amex Business Platinum Card for their tax payments because their tax payments tend to be pretty high, even if they're making quarterly tax payments, a couple times a year. And I also think there's some great perks and benefits with the Amex Business Platinum Card. People joke that it's, this like overrated coupon book of credits. And I don't utilize every single last credit on the Amex Business Platinum Card, but I love the $200 airline credit. And I think one of the most underrated perks of the Amex Business Platinum Card is that you can get a 35% points rebate when you book business or first class flights through the Amex travel portal using that card. So this is great when you're very constrained in terms of the flight that you want to take and you can't find it by transferring points to a transfer partner. You can go straight to the Amex travel portal, you find, the business or the first class flight that you want to book or an economy flight on the one airline that you've designated as the airline where you get your travel credit annually, and you pay for your flight in points and you get 35% of your points refunded to you. So this is a really, I think, really, really beneficial feature of the Amex Business Platinum Card that not a lot of people really utilize. But then finally, that Capital One Business Venture X card, it's also what I consider to be a premium level travel card. So it's going to have a high annual fee. You definitely want to be aware of that before you sign up for it. But again, for ease, simplicity, you earn 2 times points and there's no cap on your points earning, the same way that there is with the Amex Blue Business Plus cards. You get 2 times points on all your business spend. Again, very simple, streamlined, straightforward, great perks and benefits. If you are located at an airport that has a Capital One lounge or you travel through one frequently, oh my gosh, those
So
things are
good.
amazing.
No brainer.
Yes, I
So
have this
good.
card and my home airport is like the worst lounge desert of
Chicago
all
is
major airports.
awful.
Yes, in the US. And it's still worth it for me because of the points earning and that very rare time when I can sort of shift my travel to go through, Dallas.
Yes.
And I can take advantage of that amazing Capital One lounge. So again, I think there are actually tons of incredible business credit cards, but these are 4 of my favorites. And again, there's a card for kind of every spend level and every need, which I think is really, really nice.
Absolutely. I want to talk really quickly before we move on. I want to jump back over to the Blue Business Plus because this is such a frustrating card in terms of their welcome offer. And I'm wondering if you have any data points on what causes them to offer. I got an offer for 50,000 points a
Which
couple
is
months
great.
ago, but I didn't know at the time how great that was. And I also
Yeah.
didn't know that you have to jump on it like that or it's gone. Because when I
Yes.
went to actually apply for it, actually after understanding how great that was, it disappeared. It was back to 15,000. Then I got an email later that was 25,000. And I'm like, should I jump on this? Should I not? Is the 50 ever coming back? You had an amazing episode with Cam from Our Family Passport,
Yes.
who we had on a few weeks ago, talking through Amex, and you guys were saying some really interesting things about stuff you can do to maybe potentially get targeted. And it was all anecdotal, but it was interesting. So I think, especially because that's a good card for people that have small side businesses to pair with like the Amex Gold. I would love to talk to our listeners a little bit about maybe what they can do anecdotally to get those higher targeted offers.
Yeah. So one thing I will say is that Cam Price is the absolute expert in American Express. So when it comes to questions like this, I'm usually sending her a message and being like, this is what I think. You tell me where I'm wrong because she is so experienced with this ecosystem. So I think a lot of it is anecdotal. We don't really know for sure. But I think one of the things that folks listening to this should take away is that, all of the major rewards credit card issuers, they all have a personality, I think. And American
Yeah.
Express, one of the things about their personalities, they're very, very idiosyncratic, meaning that for any kind of individual rewards card, we see this with the Amex Personal Gold card. We see it absolutely with the Amex Blue Business Plus card, the Amex Business Platinum card, is that the welcome offer is not the welcome offer is not the welcome offer. With other credit card issuers, you go, to their public website. each specific card will have a welcome offer. And that may change, right? There may be a promotion, but at any given time, with other credit card issuers, there's one welcome offer for each specific card. Amex throws that out the window. They're like,
Yep.
we're going to show you a welcome offer on our public website. Your friend may have a referral link for the same card with a totally different welcome offer. And we may also have targeted offers floating around in emails or snail mail that are different than those other two. And so I think one of the important things to understand about Amex is that before you ever apply for any of their rewards cards, just do a little bit of research, because chances are, especially the public offer available through American Express on their website, is most likely to be the lowest welcome offer for that specific card at that specific time. So with Amex specifically, just know this is the way they work. And so usually it can be helpful to do a little bit of internet research first. Whenever you're ready to apply for a specific card, you can Google, what's the highest offer for this specific card right now? You'll see a lot of different blogs, a lot of different points educators like to report on these offers in a very kind of updated way. And so first, you want to get that understanding of what is the best offer that's even available on this card.
Okay, before you hear the rest of today's episode, we have a Facebook group and we want to tell you all about it.
If you're like us and you love exploring new destinations without breaking the bank, you're going to want to join.
We've launched this exclusive Facebook group dedicated to sharing tips, tricks, and insider secrets on maximizing your travel experience using points and miles.
So whether you're a seasoned pro or just dipping your toes into the world of traveling on credit card rewards, this is the perfect community for you.
Plus, you'll have a chance to connect with our amazing listeners, ask each other questions, and learn from each other's experiences.
So if you're ready to take your travel game to the next level, join us in the Traveling on Points, Wonderland on Points podcast Facebook group.
You can find the link for the group in our show notes or just search it on Facebook. We cannot wait to see you there sharing your travel stories and picking up some new tricks along the way. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
And oftentimes, again, if you do a little bit of Googling, you'll be able to see if people have access to specific links that link to that elevated offer. They tend to post them. And so trying different links, trying links like in incognito mode will sometimes bring up that higher offer. And so I think the two most important things to understand are that Amex plays games with their welcome offers. So do your research first.
Yes.
And number two, be willing to be persistent. I've seen stories of someone, people who click a link and they see kind of a lower or a mid-tier offer and they just keep trying, right? They click that link 7 times, or again, they click that link through an incognito window, or they change their location. We had this whole thing going, this whole conversation with a bunch of people I know, where when the Amex Business Platinum offer first came out, that really elevated 250,000 point welcome offer, everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people in my community were trying to get that offer, and everything they did would just show them the lower offers. And I don't know what it was. There was something about grocery store Wi-Fi's where people started realizing that they went
That's
and
hilarious.
They checked, if they were at like the Starbucks in their local grocery store, they went to their grocery store and just tried to pull the offer up, that everyone was finding this 250,000 point welcome offer. So
Stop.
yeah, so Amex is just unpredictable. But if you understand they're unpredictable and you're willing to engage like it's a game, like let me check a few times a day. Checking a link takes you 4 seconds. We're not talking about putting aside 10 hours of your day to do this. But if you're willing to play with Amex, check the links, go to different locations, check them, check them incognito, you can be really surprised about what you can pull up.
Okay, that's
what
amazing.
Makes me laugh about that, because I've had a similar thing with Instagram. I made a couple posts on Instagram and I uploaded them on an airplane Wi-Fi, and those posts did so well, better than other posts. And I asked myself, is this because it was something about being on their Wi-Fi made the algorithm like it better and it did better. I have no idea, but it makes me think of that when you say getting on the grocery store Wi-Fi to check, because I have literally had that same experience before with Instagram. My least favorite game that Amex has been playing lately is with the Amex Gold personal card, where it's been having this offer of up to 100,000 points.
I don't like that.
I hate it because you have to apply first, find out if they're going to approve you, And then they'll say, oh, but you're going to just get the 60,000 or you're
Right.
going to
Like,
get
tell us
70.
what
And
we're
they
gonna
don't
get
tell
so we can
you
make a
up front.
decision about it. Yeah, I don't like that kind of like newish thing that Amex is doing. And I hope it doesn't spread, to
Me
more of
too.
their card products. Because again, I'm always thinking about what is really great for the consumer. And as a consumer, that is not a fun experience. I want to be able to make a decision about, do I want this card, yes or no? And I want to know what to expect from it. And that doesn't feel like a fun game for me. That feels like that really
No,
benefits
it
Amex
feels
a lot
very
more than it
deceitful.
benefits. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
like it. I'm a huge Amex fan. I love Amex, but
Mhm.
that to me really rubs me the wrong way. Okay, moving on, but also
Yeah.
circling back because you said something earlier that I wanted to ask about, and that's paying taxes.
Taxes.
Yes,
Mhm.
both maybe personal taxes, but also business taxes. Give us some tips for that. Is it worth it? People are always kind of weighing, well, if you pay with a credit card, there's a fee of maybe
Yes.
1.8%. So when is it worth it? Are there any tips for how to do it the right way to really maximize the points earning and it just being worth it?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts about this. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I think, especially for business owners or for people who find themselves in a position, where they're either have a tax bill due in April or for whatever reason they are paying quarterly estimated taxes, even as someone who may be an employed professional. For me and my family personally, our tax payments are one of the biggest points earners for us every single year. That does not mean it's going to be right for everybody. I never advocate all or nothing approaches for people. So I want to acknowledge that the answer for whether or not paying taxes for you by credit card is right is going to be individual. But I want to talk about why it works for me and a couple of tips for how I think people can make this decision. Because I think to just decide without any data or information, you can be going down the wrong path. So let's just kind of talk about generalities first, which is that for federal taxes, so we're not going to talk about state taxes because that applies 50 different ways to 50 different, kind of circumstances. But for federal taxes, you can pay those online with a credit card. And if you're using a points earning credit card, you can earn points for that. But as you mentioned, that comes with a cost. I wish this was free. Maybe one day it will be. It's not right now. So, in order to be able to use a credit card to pay your taxes online, you will have to pay a processing fee. Historically, there were three different kind of payment platform options that you had to pay your taxes. You can go straight to the IRS website. You could see them laid out. And each of the three payment platforms had their own processing fee that they would list, and you could pick which platform you want to pay through. Now, very recently, as of just like a week ago, one of those payment processors disappeared. We don't know if it's going to
Oh.
come back. Don't really know what's going on with that. But like today, right before we got on to record this, I went onto the IRS website just to confirm. And right now, there are two options available to pay your taxes online. One of them is showing a processing fee of 1.75%. One of them is showing a processing fee of 1.85%.
Hmm.
So, all things being equal, I think it makes sense if you're going to consider this. We want to go with the lowest processing fee that we can pay, which again, right now is around 1.75%. So, the way that I think about this is that if you're going to be paying your taxes with a credit card, you have to pay this fee in order to do so. And so for me, the math that you want to do is understanding how many points total am I going to earn if I pay this tax bill using a credit card? And then number two, how confident am I that I'm going to get at least as much, if not a lot more value from those points I earned
Mhm.
than the cost of the processing fee itself? Because if I came up to you and said, hey, if you give me $100, I'm going to turn around and give you $1,000. What would you say to that?
100%
Yes,
yes.
please.
Right, right. Like no one is saying, oh, but I don't want to spend that $100, right? Because when you look at the picture overall, $900 is a lot more than 100, right? The question isn't, do you want $1,000 or $900, right? The question is, would you pay 100 to get 10 or to get 1,000 back? So the answer to that is yes. But if I said, hey, would you pay me $100 if I promised I would give you $112 in return? Maybe, right? You're still
Maybe.
coming out ahead. But if I was like, but you got to run a mile to me right now to give me the $100 first, like, then is it
Right.
worth it? You're going to like,
Too many
I
hoops.
don't think so.
Hard
And so
pass.
right. So you want to make sure that you do this math. And so in general, I have found that there are a couple scenarios that to me are kind of easy yeses in terms of when is this absolutely worth it. I think in general, if you have opened up a new credit card, especially like one of these business cards that we've talked about that can have huge welcome offers, If you can earn a welcome offer by paying your taxes with a credit card, for the way that I do that math, that always works out in my favor. If you're
Mhm.
going to be earning on top of the points that you earn just for making, the payment to begin with, you're going to be earning another 200,000 or 250,000 points as a welcome bonus. That math always maths to me personally.
Yes.
Now, there are actually a lot of times where my family still continues to make tax payments where we don't have a brand new card to earn a welcome bonus for that payment, and it still makes sense. And oftentimes for us, it makes sense because we're using a card that is going to be earning more than 1 point per dollar spent. So
Yes.
again, I'm using an Amex Business Platinum that's going to earn 1.5 times points, or I'm using a Capital One card that's earning 2 times points. Then the amount of points you're going to earn is going to be much more favorable, right? Than if you're using a credit card that only earns 1 point per dollar spent. And then I think kind of the flip side of this too is really kind of gauging what is your confidence and your comfort level and getting value out of your points. There's such a big learning curve. And I think all of us start in this hobby where there's no reason that you should know all the strategies to get a lot of value out of your points. And so your first couple redemptions may not be amazing ones. My first redemption before I knew anything, I redeemed 250,000 Chase points through the Chase travel portal for $2,500 worth of economy flights, right? Like, I was like,
Ah,
"Oh, let's do that in the beginning."
yeah.
So for the person who says, right now, I'm just learning and I would redeem my points through the credit card travel portal, I would say, hey, I don't think this is probably a good idea for you because we don't know yet that there's a really high likelihood you're going to get way more value out of these points than, 1 cent or 1.5 cents per point. Where I am now with more experience, I am very, very confident that the type of travel that I personally want to do and the way that I use my points, I tend to get on average, because I've calculated this because I'm weird, I tend to get on average, depending on the year, 4 to 5 to 5.5 cents per point across the board, from all of my points redemptions over a 12-month period. So for me personally, I am more than happy to pay a 1.75% fee to use a credit card that's going to earn me 2 times points on a tax payment when I know there's a very high likelihood that I'm going to be able to turn those points into really, really high value redemptions. But again, I really want to emphasize that does not mean it has to be right for everybody. And that's why I think it's so great to do that math and even do the math every single time. Just because you pay taxes one quarter with a credit card and that was a great decision that quarter, that doesn't mean then that you should always and forever pay your taxes using credit cards. But I think especially for folks who have high tax payments and they have a card that's going to earn them more than 1 point per dollar spent, and they feel like they are at least kind of intermediate in their points redemption, man, again, you can get so much value from those points.
Absolutely. It's the same thing we tell people with annual fees. It's like your
Yes,
pay to play fee, but it almost always is worth it to hold these cards with these transferable currencies where you may be paying a little bit of an annual fee, but that gives you that window to the world of transferring and maximizing your value. So it really
absolutely.
always do the math, always make sure with annual fees that you're going to be able to take advantage of the credits and the perks, but same with this processing fee. It really is just a pay to play, and if you understand the value of transferring and you can get a little knowledge there, you can really make some amazing things happen with these points. So I that was
100%.
incredible advice and very well put in a concise way that I think everybody will understand. You're so good at explaining things.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I feel like we should move on to talk about some ideas of redemptions and ways people can use their points now. Business owners are accumulating these massive amounts of points, and you have a podcast called Point Me to First Class. And full disclosure, when I first got into the points and miles world, I didn't listen to your podcast because I didn't think it was talking to me, because
Yeah,
I
I
am
get that.
not a business owner. I am more looking for the budget redemptions to stretch for my family. But then I just tried out an episode one day and I was like, okay, just for all of our listeners, Devon's podcast is not just talking to business owners. It's an amazing place for business owners to go, but the podcast covers everything and it is a great way to learn. So we definitely want everybody to head over and listen to your podcast because it's very, very well done. But Let's talk about some of the fun things you've done with your points, or
Yeah.
maybe that some of your clients have done with their points in terms of business and first class redemption. So, which
Yes.
airlines do you love, and like what have been some of those amazing high value flights you've taken?
Oh, so much. So first, I just want to preface this by saying that, one of my favorite things about the points and miles hobby is that it is so broad and so diverse. I truly believe there is no one right way to use points, no wrong way to use points. And I have so many people in my audience and my community who really, really prioritize, using their points for economy travel because they say my goal is I want to travel as many times as I can, right? And I am perfectly happy in economy class. And so I think it's a little bit of a misnomer that I chose Point Me to First Class as my business name because I don't mean first class only literally. I think points are incredible for flying business and first class. But to me, first class travel is such a personal definition, right? First class travel can be getting to bring your mom along on a trip with your family that otherwise wouldn't be possible, right? Getting
Mm,
to visit more of the United States than otherwise would be possible. And so I like to preface that to say, that, I think one of the things that can be challenging about this hobby is that those of us who are in it, we get so excited about it. And there are some just unbelievable things you can do with points. And I never, ever, ever want someone to hear how someone else is using their points or earning their points and use it as a reason for comparison or to say, oh,
mm,
wow, like I don't know that that would be possible for me. And that can feel terrible. And so, what I always want to offer folks is when you hear about how other people are using their points, if it's something that just isn't interesting to you, or for whatever reason makes you feel a little bit down about what's available to you, please ignore it because there are
yeah.
so
Yes.
many brilliant ways to use points that are so fulfilling. And I also acknowledge that just because of my own personality, my situation, I love getting a deal. And it happens in points that oftentimes the most outsized deals tend to be using points to book international premium cabin travel. So even though I fly domestically a lot, I fly economy a lot, I have a lot of not glamorous travel. I think when we're talking about the end of the spectrum about, but also like, what can you do with these points? This is just what's fun for me. And I think some of the things that have been so fun for me to do points with points personally is I really, at this point, in terms of international business class flights, I don't think there's a lot of products that can really effectively compete with Qatar Q Suites. I think there are
Mhm.
some that can, but I think Qatar Q Suites is such a typical, like aspirational type of flight and product, especially even a few years back before Qatar got integrated into the Avios currency. And so really the best way that you could book them was using American Airlines miles. This again was just such a crazy deal. You could use 75,000 American Airlines miles to fly from the US, through Doha, to Africa or to India. And I have flown Q Suites actually twice from where I live in Chicago to Johannesburg, South Africa. And I'm telling you, I wish those flights were longer. A flight is good. An international flight is good when you say, "Ah, I wish that 13-hour flight had actually been longer." And I think, again, it's such an amazing deal. Even using Avios now, it's not quite as low a price for business class, but it's still, I think, a fantastic deal when you can find that saver level award availability. And then, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, again, in terms of more international premium cabin flights, I've long been a huge fan of Air France KLM Flying Blue. I work also with a lot of families, a lot of folks who are really constrained in when they can travel. They're not location and time independent, where they can just pick up on a Tuesday,
Mm,
and fly with 3 days notice because that's when the best deal is. And so when I'm thinking about what is practical for a lot of people in my community who need to plan vacations many months out because they have to request time off at work. They probably have kids on a very traditional school schedule where they're trying to travel, for spring break or during a summer break. I love Air France KLM Flying Blue. They service tons of different airports in the United States. A lot of times, one of our favorite transferable points currencies may have a transfer bonus over to Air France, Flying Blue. They tend, not so much in the last month or two, but historically, they tend to have really good availability, in economy, premium economy, business class. And so I think for especially families or groups of people, I just love that product. I think it's such a great entry level kind of redemption for folks. It's not super complicated. It's not super rare compared to some of the other redemptions that we talk about. And so I just love a good, solid, predictable product. And I think Air France KLM is one of those.
Gives you
Absolutely.
that.
Hey, you are in Chicago, and we have a lot of people who talk about how some of the most aspirational trips and redemptions, they feel like you've got to get to the West Coast. So we didn't give you this question ahead of time. So I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but do you
No, it's
have any
fine.
routes out of Chicago, which is kind of easy
Yes.
for everybody to get to? Okay. Tell us, just throw out a couple where if
Yes.
people could easily position to Chicago, they could get some really great points and miles redemptions to go some very cool
Yeah.
places.
Absolutely. So I actually think I'm incredibly fortunate because I think Chicago is an amazing hub. And also for people who are not located on the West Coast, Washington, D.C., I think
Mm.
is fantastic. Everyone knows about JFK because why wouldn't you? But I actually think from doing tons of recreational searches because this is what I
That's
do with
what we
my
do.
time for fun. Chicago and Washington, D.C. are amazing hubs for award flights. And so from Chicago specifically, I think we kind of have the best of both worlds because we're not all the way on the West Coast and we're not all the way on the East Coast. And so for people, this is going to be a little bit more, not so much a niche redemption, but one that I don't think gets talked about a lot is that if you have City points or you have Capital One points, both City and Capital One points transfer to EVA Airlines. And this is an airline that is based in Taiwan. Now, what people don't understand or don't often know is that EVA is an airline that releases very, very little premium cabin award space to its partners. So you can go on Aeroplan or you can go on United, and maybe you'll find one business class seat from Chicago or another hub to Taiwan and then beyond anywhere basically in Asia. But EVA, for its own award program, releases tons of business class award availability. And
Oh.
so if you have your eye, so many people want to go to Japan and trying to find, business class, especially awards on JAL or on ANA can be very, very, very hard. Well, book a business class flight on EVA, through Taipei, either spend a little bit of time in Taipei or just connect through Taipei, go, to Japan or go to Singapore, go to Bangkok. So I think that's one amazing flight if you're thinking about going from Chicago west and then going from Chicago east. Again, we're a hub for so many international airlines. So we tend to have great award availability on Air France and KLM, going either to Paris or Amsterdam or beyond. Turkish Airlines, we can get some really great award availability for Turkish Airlines. Another one of my favorites, which is a program that is often overlooked because it can be very challenging to earn a lot of points in if you don't put spend on their co-branded card or you just don't want to outright buy their points, is Lufthansa Miles and More. So Lufthansa is
Mhm.
part of the Star Alliance. A lot of times you can find some awards for Lufthansa or their partners like Swiss or Austrian through the Star Alliance partners. But if you happen to be able to get Lufthansa Miles and More miles, we have incredible award availability. Again, you can book tons, and I'm like 4, 5, 6 business class awards on Lufthansa where you can go from Chicago to Frankfurt and then connect anywhere, basically in Europe or beyond in their route network. And for people, again, who are in this hobby because they want to have a really aspirational kind of redemption, where most of their travel might be what they consider to be regular travel, but every once in a while they want to take a bunch of saved points and fly one of these products that I don't think any one of us would ever, ever spend cash for, maybe even if we did win the lottery, is that you can book, Lufthansa first class is not the most updated hard product compared to some of these other airlines out here, but it is such a classic first class experience. And there tends to be really fantastic award availability, even for first class on Lufthansa. So, I mean, when I think about Chicago, I actually think in terms of it's very few limitations. Like Singapore Airlines doesn't fly to O'Hare, which breaks my heart. But really, other than that, pretty much all of the major international airlines will go through Chicago. So maybe don't plan your award travel for the winter because things can get a little hairy here
Yep.
sometimes. but other times of year, it's a great jumping off point for people to find really good award availability.
Amazing. I'm so glad I asked that question because those are
Yeah, me
not
too.
tips we've had before. You heard it here first, everybody.
Exclusive.
You broke my heart a little bit talking about that business class redemption from Chicago to South Africa.
Yeah.
I'm headed to South Africa very, very soon. I'm thrilled, excited to do it. I'm flying from DC, but I'm flying with a group, and I was not able to book my ticket myself. So this is not a points redemption for me. It was a cash flight. And because I'm with a group, I am in economy, and the thought I am trying to work myself up to the thought of it is a direct flight. There's a fantastic United direct flight
Yes.
from IAD down to Cape Town, which is wonderful. Love that, except for 14 hours with my jittery ADHD self in economy. I'm a little nervous about it. I am
You
a
just
little
focus on
nervous.
the destination. I mean, one of the
That's what
things
I'm
that
going
I
to
talk
do.
about is before I learned about points and miles, my approach to travel, because I did want to travel around the world, was just by any means possible. And so I have flown the most basic of basic economies to so many different places. I've flown to Asia. I've flown to India. I've flown to Nigeria. I've flown so many
Wow.
places in basic economy. And while I would not say that that was the most lovely flight experience of my life, I think the reason so many of us travel is for the experience of the destination of the travel. And you're going to have that amazing experience regardless of what the seat looked like on your way there.
Mhm.
So, I think, again, whatever it takes, you try to sleep if you can. You bring a lot of
Whatever it
audiobooks and
takes.
podcasts, but that
That's
time
definitely
will
going to
pass.
be the theme of my trip, whatever it takes.
Yes.
Well, speaking of my upcoming trip to South Africa, what's on your travel itinerary for your family in 2025? Give us one or two of the places that you guys
Yes.
are going.
Okay, so I am so excited about this. My kids right now just turned 9 and just turned 6. And so actually the last couple years post pandemic, we haven't done a lot of what I consider to be ambitious international travel with them, mostly because I was not sure how my youngest was going to tolerate it, and then by virtue how I was going to tolerate her not
Right.
tolerating it. And I really feel like literally in the last like 2 months, we have crossed over this threshold where I think both of my kids now are going to be able to tolerate long haul flights. So I feel like this is the year for my family of finally being able to do more ambitious trips, more ambitious to me than just, a 4-hour direct flight from Chicago, which we have lots of lovely options. But again, I want to see the world and I want my kids to see the world. And so this is the year they're going to start seeing the world. And I'm really excited about that. So one trip I already have booked for us the end of the summer before they start school is I have us booked to spend a week in Montenegro, which I'm really excited about because I think it is, again, sort of an underrated destination. And we can't get there directly from Chicago, but we can get almost there. We can get from here to major hubs in Europe, and then it's a quick jump over. So I'm really excited about that. And then for me personally, usually once a year, I will take a solo trip purely to try out an airline product that I'm excited about, which I
Mhm.
recognize most regular people are not going to do because most regular people don't actually like spending time on airplanes, but I love it. And I do this professionally. So, I think that that's a little bit of a difference as well. But my solo trip I'm going to take this year that I'm so excited about is I'm trying out 2 airline products I've never flown. One of them is Eva. So I booked myself on business class from Chicago to Taipei so I can try out Eva, their business class. And every once in a while, they have these specific aircraft that are Hello Kitty themed. Now, I am
Oh,
not
yes.
like a Hello Kitty personally. I don't personally identify as a huge Hello Kitty fan, but as an
You
experience,
do not scream Hello
no,
Kitty.
I really don't. Seriously, everyone, you should see me, right? I scream, like monotone, muted. And yes. So but I think the experience, to fly a branded kind of airline product like that can be really fun.
Yes.
And so I'm flying out to Taipei for a day and then jumping over to Hong Kong because then I found a rare first class award flight on Cathay Pacific that goes
Ooh.
from Hong Kong to JFK. So even though it doesn't actually get me straight home to Chicago, it's a longer flight, which again, when you're flying first class, that's actually a good thing. So I
Yes.
get 16 hours on Cathay Pacific first class. I get to do the whole first class lounge thing in Hong Kong airport. And that's just fun for me. I do not expect anybody to relate to wanting to take a trip just so they can fly on airplanes, but I love doing that. And so for me to be able to do that one time a year where I just get to say, I've never flown this one airline and I really want to try it out, I'm really looking forward to that.
That sounds
Okay.
amazing. And I kind of think we're going to need you to come back and report on a couple of
Happily.
things, especially the Hello Kitty experience. And to be honest, if you're doing Montenegro on points, we would
Yeah.
love to do a trip deep dive with you
Yes.
because that
Yeah. And
sounds
I
like
would
a
be
fun
happy to
one.
do that. Yeah. And I think, there are some challenges to trying to book. I have a family of four. So,
Yeah.
trying to book a family of four, we prefer internationally if we can book business class. That is my preference. So I have us booked on business class. We're using, Hyatt points to stay at a Hyatt property. So we can do a whole
Yes.
debrief on that trip once it's done. Yeah.
We would
I feel like we
love to
have
have you
to
back.
follow up here and ask how you know that you're going to be on the Hello Kitty plane. When you're booking,
I
what's the
don't.
designation you're looking for?
So I actually don't, because Eva operates daily flights from Chicago to Taipei and then reverse. And there's only certain aircraft on a certain schedule that actually is the Hello Kitty aircraft. And they do publish on the website, these 3 days a week, it's the direction, Taipei to Chicago that has the Hello Kitty. And then the opposing days, when the plane has to return, is when it has it from Chicago. But, with all things in terms of aircraft, like, especially post-pandemic, I feel like you can't predict anything,
True.
right? Like, you book this thinking, oh, Thursday is the day they fly this aircraft. And lo and behold, they don't fly it on that route for 6 months. So that's one of those things where I have no clue. I'm happy to be surprised. I think no matter what, it's going to be a great experience. But, if I roll up to O'Hare at 1:00 in the morning and there is a Hello Kitty aircraft, sitting outside of the gate, I just think it'll add some fun to the experience.
Oh, yeah. That would be amazing. I mean, you might have to go to Instagram with that one. I know you're not a huge Instagrammer, but
No, once a year. But I think that is a
it
once a year
deserves
post
some
30
content. Absolutely. Okay, well, we don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for spending a portion of your day with us. And we want everybody to be able to take advantage of your offerings. So, especially for business professionals, especially for physicians, we know that you have some things that you offer clients. So, where can everybody find you, listen to you, interact with you? Give us all the things.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me here today. This has been such a fun conversation. So, everyone, the easiest place to find me is my website. It's just pointmetofirstclass.com. For people who want to just hear more, learn more just about my personal approach, philosophy about points and miles, opportunities that are available for folks who might have high expenses, you can check out my podcast. It's just called Point Me to First Class. You can find it anywhere that you find podcasts. And then for people, again, who really want to learn how to leverage their expenses, how to turn it into a lot of points and what to do with those points, I also have a course that's called Points Made Easy to help people learn how to do this process so they don't have to spend years on the internet like I did trying to figure this out in the beginning. But you can find all the information about that on my website. So there's a lot of different ways that you can find me.
Perfect. We're going to
Awesome.
link all of that stuff
Thank
up
you.
in the show notes. So it's super easy for people to find you. Last thing, as we're leaving, do you have a creator or two that you would like to shout out that you think our audience could learn a bunch from?
Yes, I actually think that it's very coincidental that you already mentioned Camry Price, because she was on my list. I think she is phenomenal. She's on Instagram at Our Family Passport. She is an art history professor. So I think there's something in the way that she teaches that I can really, really relate to. She is fantastic. So I love her. And then the other person I love who I think would be so great for your audience, and I don't know if you've had her on yet, her name is Amina Bakali. She does Instagram at Hassan on Holiday. I love her education. She talks about family travel. She talks about travel, for all sorts of different types of people, different types of trips, and economy travel. I think that she is just so relatable to so many families. And so I think both of those ladies are just incredible.
Absolutely. We had Amina on as well, but it's been a long time and we know we have a lot of new listeners. So I'm going to link both Camry and Amina in the show notes so all of you guys can go find them, follow their Instagrams. They're amazing educators. We love them so much. Thank you, Devon, for being with us today. It's so fun having a podcaster on.
Thank you so much for having me. I think you guys can probably relate. There's nothing I love talking about more than points and miles. And so to be able to kind of just share ideas and information is so much fun. I really, really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. It was a joy to have you here today. If you enjoyed this show today, please consider writing us a review or clicking 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please subscribe and follow along so that you never miss an episode.
You can follow the podcast on Instagram or YouTube at Wonderland on Points Podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Family Travel for the Win with the number 4.
And you can find me on Instagram at Points to Wonderland.
If you're thinking about getting a new travel rewards credit card, consider using the links in our show notes. Using our links helps to support us and keep our podcast going so we can provide you with all the latest tips and tricks when it comes to traveling on points.
And if you aren't sure which card is right for you, shoot us an email at wonderlandonpoints@gmail.com, and we would be happy to walk you through a free card consultation. That's also a great place to send us all of your comments and questions. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you here next time.